Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Forgotten Vehicles, the somewhat weekly show where you tell me that the car that I'm featuring is not actually forgotten. But before we dive into today's episode about the Comet, we're going to be going over the Easter eggs of the last episode. The Easter eggs for the previous episode were actually pretty simple. I simply placed the two other downforce cars on the ramp right there, which of course are the ETR-1 and the Tyrus. There were three people with a very sharp eye by the name of that guy, Matt W, and Perham382. It was a very nicely spotted from those guys. Let's move on to today's episode about the Comet. The Comet obviously has always been a very iconic vehicle within the GTA franchise, starting all the way back to Vice City in 2002. Throughout the years it had many different iterations of course, but for the sake of this video we're simply going to be focusing on GTA Online only. The original Comet came out in 2013 with the launch of GTA Online, and funny enough, back then it actually was one of the top sports cars to use within races. And as more and more time went on, the Comet still was relatively competitive, at least in the hands of a good friend of mine, which is Frezzy's. For some bizarre reason, I don't know if it's the color of his car with the salmon pink, he still managed to compete with the top sports cars even though they were miles and miles faster. We don't know how he does it, we're kind of accusing him of cheating, but let's move on, because obviously as time went on, more iterations of the Comet actually came out, such as for example the Comet Retro Custom, which was a lot more like the original from Vice City. It had the open roof option and also has downforce, but funny enough actually, it was slower than the original Comet, even with the downforce that it had. And the previous retro cars that were released for GTA Online were all following the same kind of path, so it did make sense to release the Comet Retro Custom and have it be slower, even though it did have downforce. But overall I thought it was a very nice and interesting car to drive. I had one for a long time, but then of course the next Comet came out, which was the Comet Safari. Now the Comet Safari definitely was a car that was very controversial. It looks a little bit weird with the big wheels and stuff like that, and the option to add machine guns to the Comet Safari was pretty controversial at the time. Personally, I felt that there really didn't need to be any machine guns to it, but for some reason during the Doomsday Heist it was very much necessary that every single car ever should get machine guns to it. It was optional, you didn't have to get it, but I personally still felt like, why even make it an option in a car like this? This is something that you would want to add to your other collection of Comets if you are someone that collects something like that. But obviously it's an option, it's optional, so you didn't actually have to get it if you didn't want to. But then a couple of months later, after the release of the Doomsday Heist, the drip feed was still going strong, and then Rockstar released what arguably is my personal favorite Comet because it drives so very nice, which is obviously the Comet SR. Obviously, just like in real life, every Porsche looks the same, and yes, this is a direct quote from the Grand Tour Top Gear. I don't know anything about cars, particularly about real life things, but I do know that this thing is an actual dream to drive. The Comet SR is actually the exact opposite of what the original Comet was in terms of performance. The original Comet is a little bit more difficult to handle, it's a rear-wheel drive car, and it tends to spin out a lot as well. Because of that, it's one of the more difficult and more challenging cars to drive, and that's also one of the reasons why Frezzies enjoy driving it so much. I'm pretty sure that if I say Frezzies, there's going to be a whopping 10 people who know who I'm talking about, but I'm just using it as an example because I'm pretty sure that there's more people like Frezzies watching this video right now who enjoy driving cars that are challenging to drive. But I think that's one of the main reasons why it's such an iconic vehicle within the game and within the GTA franchise as a whole. The way the car sounds is also very nice, and especially with the later iterations as well. It's a very nice car, and unfortunately the only Comet you really see from time to time is going to be the Comet SR. The Comet Safari is definitely one of those cars that you never really see because I think the majority of people don't really particularly like the car as a whole. The Comet Retro Custom is also something that I don't recall the last time I even saw one. And obviously the only reason why you see a Comet from time to time is because it's driving through the streets of Los Santos. But I felt the Comet deserved a little bit of a tip of the hat in this episode 20 because it is an iconic vehicle, and I'm pretty sure many of you don't really own one anymore because it is not a pariah and it doesn't win any races. But I'd love to hear what you think about the Comets, like maybe even all 4 of them. Let me know in those comments down below, and I'd love to see what you have to say about it. But with all that said and with all that done, that was it for this one. Thank you all so very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all later.